So a little bit about myself. I'm sure most of you have read a little bit. Do I need to go into about myself? Does everybody basically know? No idea. Okay. I've been studying Jyotish for about 10 years now. The first 2 or 3 years was just casually reading through various texts, and I had more friends that were into it, and the fire hadn't been ignited yet. And when I was in Ayurveda school, we had a medical Jyotish weekend, and the fire was lit. And I've been devoured by it since. And I met my Jyotish Guru now 5 years ago in India, and it's an East Indian tradition. Different parts of India have different flavors. And I've lived in India for quite some time with him and traveled, and at the moment I'm teaching his tradition. So we're going to be learning an East Indian style approach to Jyotish. I have a background in Ayurveda and yoga as well. I practice Ayurveda and also teach yoga. All the Vedic Sciences. Okay. So, one of the things we start class with here is Om. What's your understanding of Om?
The vibration that underlies all existence.
All existence. Do you guys talk about the different levels of sound, Madhyama, Shanti, Pranava?
We haven't talked about we haven't gotten into sound yet.
Om is, not only is it underlying, but just like the canvas is underneath of a picture. And that canvas is made mostly weave. What's canvas made of? It's weave, right? It's woven. And that woven stuff is coming from an animal or cotton or some plant. So even though we're looking at a picture right there that's painted, it keeps going back on multiple different levels. And in that same way, when it keeps going back into getting down to the molecular structure of what's making it up, even finer than that, we're getting to the level of Om. So when he says Om underlies the whole universe, the level is quite subtle. And we'll get into that slowly. Every class we start with certain spiritual concepts. We have lots of concepts. So when we meditate on Om is composed of 3 letters. And each of those 3 aksharas, akshara is the word for letter, was seen by a different rishi. Rishi is a seer, a sage. And those rishis are connected with the stars above us. And the particular 7 main rishis in the Vedic tradition are the 7 rishis of the Big Dipper. And 3 of those rishis each perceive different parts of the Om. Gautama Rishi perceived the Atri Rishi perceived the U, and Bharadwaj Rishi perceived the So do you work much with diksha in your Sanskrit studies, pronunciation?
No, we just have to read. It's academic, right?
Very academic.
So, yeah.
The on the M, the Anunasika. How do you what's your pronunciation? Versus the Anunasika versus the Anuswara.
Anuswara is more like a let's see, come up with an example, but more like a it's a nasal, the Anuswara.
And the Anunasika?
Well, that's also a nasal, but a different type of nasal.
Okay, how do you differentiate the two?
Ask me when I get to second year Sanskrit.
So your first year. Okay. So now some people say it's M. It's not M. As you see, we didn't mention the sound, the ma sound. It's called Anunasika. It's actually a M happens ma. It comes from the lips. where Anunasika is coming from the crown. It's a nasal that goes up to the crown. So it's it's an M sound, but it's not coming from the lips. It's coming from higher up. So it's A, U, Anunasika. And this Anunasika was perceived by Bharadwaj Rishi. So before we do Om, we take and we break it down into 3 parts. And we take the Rishi, and this is traditional Vedic way of chanting Om. Before you chant Om, we put the Rishi on our head. And the Rishi is a seer, it's a sage. It's one who sees. And it's going to guide our mind to understand that sound. Some people know we talk about Rishis on top of our head all the time. And now we have the beginners, and so where to begin? But we'll be talking a lot about Rishis on our head.
Who was the second Rishi?
Atri. Atri Rishi. So what we do first is, so Gautama is the first Rishi. We touch the crown of our head, and we say, Gautamaye Namaha. Gautamaye Namaha. Atye Namaha. Atye Namaha. And Bharadwaj. Bharadwaje Namaha. If you feel that feel it at the lips. Go You feel it at the lips? We don't want it at the lips. We want the vibration to be coming from high in the head.
Where's your tongue when you
it's relaxed.
just hang out?
Yeah, it's relaxed. Okay. So now we'll put the Om together, and as we put it together, we want to make sure that all 3 of them stay even. We'll do it longer, but so it's 3 even parts, because Om is composed of these 3 even parts. Deep breath in. It goes to the U, and then exhale the Anunasika internally in your mind. So shutting the eyes, inhaling Ah, holding for a moment O, and exhaling again, inhaling, ah. Try and keep the 3 even. To practice pranayama, try and make that starting and stopping at the hole at the top as fluid as the Om is fluid. So you gently go into the hole and gently come out of the hole. Sitting quietly with the breath. If you come from any tradition that has a guru mantra, say that guru mantra and put it on the crown of your head. Here we say, Om Jum Sa Vyam Vyasadeva Sa Jum Om. Put that guru mantra on the top of your head to guide your consciousness, to guide your intelligence. And slowly open your eyes. That's how we start class here. So we started by putting Guru Mantra on our head. And do you guys have a Guru Mantra in your school?
We have different ones we chant.
Yeah, different, but you have particular Guru Mantra.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Guru Bija and Guru Stefan.
We put that on top of our head before we begin, because our head is the seat of our intelligence. And they always say that whenever you start studying Jyotish, you should always start it with Jupiter in the ascendant. The ascendant is those who know little Jyotish represents the head. And Jupiter represents the Guru. So we always want the Guru on our head, because we always want the Guru guiding our mind. And so when the Jupiter, I think Jupiter is in the 6th house right now. Actually, it's probably in the 5th by now. You don't have the choice to always get exactly what you want, so we have to make it the way we want. We're going to start this first section talking about the Vedas. And we're doing Jyotish, so why should we study the Vedas? Why should you know something about Vedas if we're going to do astrology? Why?
It comes from the Vedas, yeah, where it all begins.
What begins? I'm very skeptical about everything.
Oh.
Everything I've ever learned, I've been a terrible skeptic. So-and-so says, oh, it all comes from there. And I say, and I pick up the book and I read it, and I don't see any Jyotish. I read the, they're talking about Indra and Agni and huh?
A recipe for human decision making and action. A recipe for how humans interact with each other and with their environment.
Okay. I always get comments. You don't have to have. You don't. I don't expect you to have the right answer.
No. Astrology would influence everything. You're right, but the Vedas are specific to human needs.
Depending on the Veda.
Right.
Yeah. We'll get into that. I'll give you the answer in a minute, right? This is how I teach. My most favorite teacher, before he ever told me anything, he'd ask me first. That way I could present whatever I know, and he could start from like where my not knowing was. So I just try and often practice the same. I want to know where you are. What are the Vedas? They always tell you that there's 4, right? And then what?
It's a body of knowledge.
It's a body of knowledge. They always state that there's 4 first, but why? This is a serious skeptic talking, So, and I'm going to tell you why. But unless we're skeptical, unless we wonder why, our school is not a school that doesn't ask why. We always ask why. We never take anything for granted. Everything should be understood with the intelligence. With Vedic science, there's nothing that you just have to have faith on. If you really ask why, there'll be a reason for everything. And as you were talking about science, it might not be the Western science reason, but there is a Vedic scientific reasoning for everything. So the Vedas, Vid literally means to know. So Vedas means knowledge. It's a body of knowledge. And we have 4 Vedas. Now Jyotish, Vedic astrology, is considered a limb of the Vedas. When we take this body of knowledge and we personify it as a person, it has arms and legs and noses and ears and eyes, and Jyotish is one of these parts of the Vedas. It's particularly the part called the eye. And so it's the eye of the Vedas, Jyotish. And so what really makes me want to teach this in the very beginning is often I was in a place where people were arguing about what the purpose of Jyotish is. And they were making up the purpose of Jyotish. They were just saying things. And there were nice things that they were saying, but they weren't coming from any place of knowledge. If Jyotish is an eye of the Vedas, its purpose, your arm, your hand, your eye, the purpose of your eye has to do with your purpose. The purpose of your hand, what your hand is doing, has to do with what you're doing. So if Jyotish is the eye of the Vedas, what is it trying to do has to do with what the Vedas are trying to do. So when we understand what the goal of the Vedas are, we can understand the goal of Jyotish. So this is why we should understand. And with Ayurveda it's the same. They state the Vedas that they're there, but then they go on. What are the goal of the Vedas? It's going to also help us understand the goal of Ayurveda. So I'm on the page Foundation, Background Understanding, the Vedas. So the purpose of Jyotish, 2,000, 4,000 years ago, is the same purpose of Jyotish today. Even though cars are here and cars weren't there before, even though computers are here, people say this is the world now. The world is like this, and for this age we need this, or for this time we need that. The Vedas are beyond time. They're considered beyond creation, in that they are the embodiment of a knowledge that is beyond time. Right here we have these first 4 books. That's Rig Veda. The orange one is Yajurveda, the red one is Samaveda, the blue one is the Atharva Veda. That's the Vedas right there. All the Vedas are sitting right there. Is that eternal? If we light up a fire, it's gone right then and there. So when people say the Vedas are eternal, they're non-created. They're not talking about the actual physical form of the Vedas. They're talking about that which the Vedas are representing, the knowledge that they're invoking and trying to invoke in you. That knowledge, that understanding, that vid, that makes Veda, that knowing, that is the eternal. That is what will always be. And so Jyotish is a limb of that. It's a limb of that knowing that is eternal. Now, when we say Vedas, we don't just mean those 4 books. We don't just mean the eternal, this knowledge that's eternal. There's a whole system. When we say Vedas, we're talking about these 4 books called Vedas. Rig Veda, the first one, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. We're also talking about the 6 limbs of the Vedas. When we say Vedas, we mean the 6 limbs, of which Jyotish is a part. We also mean, we're including the Upavedas and the secondary branches like Ayurveda and Atharva Veda, which is politics, how to be a good politician. Dhanurveda, which is warfare. We're including the whole range of all these texts, everything that's being born from the Vedas when we say Vedas. Now, I'm trying to make you understand these Vedas so that you can understand Jyotish, because this is the root foundation. And on this page here I list down what are called the 14 abodes of knowledge. And those 14 abodes of knowledge are the 14 main branches of Vedic knowledge, of which Jyotish is one. Now this is a big topic, and I've never really taught this directly to a group before, so how I'm going about it, I'm figuring out as I go along, because what is right here is a very large, huge body of knowledge. The amount of information is, you could spend multiple lifetimes learning. So how to give it to you in a quick introduction. And to understand it properly. And not just say these are 4 books and go on. Why? Why are they the foundations of Jyotish? And why is the goal of Jyotish elucidated in these books? So, the Rig Veda is the first Veda. Anybody know anything about the Rig Veda?
It's mostly a book of hymns, but it's mostly about the Vedic pantheon gods like Indra, Agni, and a lot of them are used still today in ritual, like the Purusha Shukta and the creation stories. There's a lot of I think there's a couple creation stories in there.
A couple creation stories. So you mean they have more than one view of creation?
Yeah.
More than one view of creation. And I actually have one of the creation stories right here. And I wanted to share that because it's a very important concept to understand. There is more than one story of creation. Was there more than one creation? Most likely, how we got here was only one way. There was only one, your mother and your father created you. And that's how things work. There's one creation that got you here. There wasn't more than that. Yet, there's multiple creation stories. So the way the Rig Veda is teaching us is that certain things, their understanding is so deep that it's not possible to grasp by normal, logical thinking consciousness. They give multiple stories of the creation. Each is true, none is fully true. Each contain part of the truth. And they're giving you these different stories of creation. And these different stories become very important at different times. If you're practicing yoga, Samkhya creation becomes very important. Ayurveda Samkhya creation becomes very important. When we're doing Jyotish, Vasudeva creation becomes very important. If you're just meditating on the absolute God, then different parts of creation, different stories of creation are going to become more important. They have a purpose, a way of understanding the creation. It's a way to understand it. It's not saying that this is the way. And it's very traditional for Vedic learning to give you multiple explanations of the same thing yet very differently. So if you try and be too concrete, you're going to get confused. You're going to be like, but I thought they said it was created like this. Now you're telling me it's created like that. And so says it's created like this. The Vedic way says they're all right. It was created like that, like all of them. You have to think in multiple realities at the same time. And because the true truth is beyond words. It can't be expressed. And as soon as we express it, we've lost it. As soon as we say it, we've lost it. So they say it multiple ways to lead you in a direction. And then you use your mind and you meditate. And if everything goes right, you get the truth. And maybe you can make up another story of creation. So the Vedic way of perceiving, there's not a concrete, this is it. But yet there is. But that concrete, this is it, they're pointing to it. They're guiding you to it. But they're not saying it. Because it's beyond saying. Now, this is the way the Vedas teach, this is the way we learn Jyotish at the same time. Some people will say my guru is crazy because he'll teach one concept 5 different ways and in totally different ways with totally different purposes. And if you sometimes take the two together, they contradict each other. But they don't. Because he's pointing at a fundamental truth of the universe. And that fundamental truth, depending on which side of the hill you're looking at, whether you're up top the hill or below the hill, looks very different. So at different times we use different techniques. At different times we perceive things differently. What is considered spiritual to one person is not considered spiritual to another person. What will uplift one person will lower another person. There's no one way. And so the first thing that we have to discuss when we discuss Rig Veda is we have to break down these barriers of right and wrong. And we have to understand that everything is relative and nothing is absolute, yet there is an absolute. So that you know what Rig Veda is, more than just a name, a word.
There was neither death nor immortality then. There was no distinguishing sign of day or night. That oneness breathes without air by its own impulse. Other than that, there was nothing beyond. Darkness was hidden by darkness in the beginning, with no distinguishing sign. All this was water, potentiality of creation, the life force that was covered with emptiness. That one arose through the power of heat. Desire came upon that one in the beginning. That was the first seed of mind. Poets, seeking in their heart with wisdom, found the bond of existence in non-existence. The ray of light, Rashmi, was extended across. Was there below? Was there above? There were seed placers. There were powers. There was impulse beneath. There was giving forth above.
Let me just make a comment real fast before we go on with this. So, verse 3. The life force was covered with emptiness. That one arose through the power of heat. Yogis in the room. What is that power of heat? Tapas. Through the power of tapas. So, I just want to try and explain this so you can kind of see the multi-dimensionality that these scriptures are speaking in. So at one level here, they're talking about just a world that was created, correct? That's how it's first perceived at first. They're talking about there was nothing. And of this, there's this creation bubbling forth. But it's saying that there's tapas. From this, there was this emptiness. And in this emptiness, tapas gave this bubbling forth. Let's see exactly. That one arose through the power of heat. That one arose through the power of heat. The next verse. Desire came upon that one in the beginning. So in the beginning there was desire. Desire was the seed that created the entire universe. Why are you here? Why did you incarnate? You incarnated because of desire. And if you're unaware of your own mind, you are unaware of that seed of desire. Through tapas, through that heat inside, the fact that you are that one in the universe arises. It's not just the creation of the universe, it's the creation of the higher consciousness inside of you. Desire came upon that one in the beginning. That was the first seed of mind. Poets, seeking in their heart with wisdom, found the bond of existence in non-existence. At one level, this is talking about the rishis who were in existence before anything was created. These light beings of perception who were cognizing the universe. At another level, it's talking about you. You are the perceiver. And when that awakening comes in you, when you look in your heart, right there, seeking in their heart with wisdom, found the bond of existence and non-existence. So at the same time that this is talking about a full external creation, at the same time it's talking about the internal spiritual realizations that are occurring, happening, and burning you, awakening you, putting you to sleep and taking you to realization. This is the way the Rig is written, the Rig Veda. Everybody following that? Everybody seeing that this is just not a story about somebody wondering about the waters bubbling up. It's not just poetry. It's poetically beautiful, but it's so much deeper. Multiple levels. There's two more verses on the other side. What's it? It ends with... Okay.
Who really knows? Who will here proclaim it? Whence was it produced? Whence is this creation? The gods came afterward, with the creation of the universe. Who then knows whence it has arisen? Whence this creation has arisen, perhaps it has formed itself, or perhaps it did not. The one who looks down on it in the highest heaven, only he knows, or perhaps he does not know.
So are they claiming that it's possible to have any logical knowledge? Are they claiming any supreme, like, this is the truth?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want you to understand the philosophy. So when people start talking about any Vedic science, and they start getting too supreme or fundamentalist about anything, it has nothing to do with the Vedas. It is not the tradition of the Vedas. The tradition of the Vedas is very open. It's very accepting of different views. It's very explorative of your own inner nature. And it's not fundamentalist. We see right here. They say, who knows who made this world? At the same time they're saying, who knows why I incarnated in this birth? Where did my karma start? I got born because of my bad karma. But where did that karma start in the first place? Who knows?
Who wants to know?
Who wants to know?
It's unfathomable.
Does God know? Maybe he doesn't. So, just very important to understand that this is the way that the Vedas are perceiving. Because as we start to do Jyotish, this is the eye of this knowledge is Jyotish. So this is the working that the eye is perceiving through. Okay. So the Rig Veda, it sets the foundation of most Vedic concepts, but when they say it sets the foundation, this is how it's setting the foundation.
Loosely.
Very loosely. And you can interpret it in a million different ways. So a million things are springing forth from this. A million different traditions. Okay? So when they say it's coming from the Vedas, don't take it at face value. Like, really look. Because who's interpreting what as how? And in the same way of not being fundamental, as we see specifically with Ayurveda, it comes to the height. Ayurveda doesn't say that, it says that no medicine is good for everybody,
Mm.
yet everything is a medicine for somebody. Even mercury, which is considered a poison in the West, it's given as medicine in Ayurveda to cure certain ailments. Nothing is all bad, nothing is all good. Everything depends on the person. And so this individualizing is also something that's coming from the Vedas. That we're all different and we all need something different. So there's no such thing as the best yoga or the fastest way to enlightenment. There's many different ways to enlightenment, and depending on your own path, who you are, what makeup you are, will be determined. And in the same way that Ayurveda looks at the person and can tell that they're Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, and can tell which herbs are going to be better for them. With Jyotish, we look at somebody and we can see, are they going to be better on a very fundamentalist path? Are they going to be better with a guru or without a guru? Are they going to be better having a meditation practice, or are they going to be better doing bhakti yoga? So Ayurveda is looking just at the physical level. When we get to Jyotish, we're looking at the life of the person and individualizing the life with the person and allowing the life to line up in a way that works with the person. Just like Ayurveda works with the herbs and the food to work with that person. Say again? So now you see why Prashanti said it'll take your Ayurveda to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Because not only are you looking at the physical anymore, you're looking at everything. Yeah. And we'll throw off on that. I have another. This next line right here is the first line of the Rig Veda. The first line of each Veda is very important. And the first line is Agni Milai Purohitam Yajnasya Devam Ritvijam Hotaram Ratnadatamam. And again, translating this, there's so many different levels to translate. But the first word is Agni. It's talking about fire. And fire on one level is this physical thing that's burning. On another level, it's this power of transforming something. On another level, it's light and heat. On another level, it's illumination of consciousness. And so at the highest level, we look at Agni as the illumination of consciousness. And that Agni burns from the third eye.
And what's tapas again?
Tapas is, who wants to give a definition of tapas? That's it.
Creating heat by not doing something, like preserving the heat that is naturally inside of us.
Any other definitions of tapas?
Isn't it something to do with sadhana when you're doing some sort of spiritual practice and your energies are maybe getting consumed or burned up, or this is sort of the heat that arises in the body?
It's the heat that purifies.
Mm-hmm.
And that heat is created, you could say through austerity, but Swami...
So Agni is like a directional fire, and tapas is a central.
You don't get physical with it. Don't place it in a particular place. Tapas is, there's Agni in tapas, because tapas will increase the Agni. But tapas it's almost the heat that's created through discipline. If you notice, the more disciplined you become, the easier it is to be disciplined, and the more disciplined you can go further on from that. Swami Achyutananda at this last Shivaratri, somebody asked him, because they stayed up all night for Shivaratri, and somebody asked him, because you can stay up all night dancing at a party, and they said, what makes this different? What makes this tapas? And he said, because when you want to go to sleep, yet you push on and you force yourself to stay up, that extra effort that you awaken in you to stay awake, that's the tapas. That extra effort. And that extra effort creates this internal strength in you. And that internal strength is hot. And that burns up weakness in you. So a little bit different than the Agni in this sense, but it still has an element of Agni in it, because all heat comes from Agni. All heat will come from Agni.
Would you say that doing a mantra is a kind of tapas that creates illumination of the mind? Because you're putting your mind, you're disciplining your mind to go in a certain direction.
There's multiple levels of tapas that are happening with the mantra, because there's the tapas of just every morning getting up and doing the mantra. Getting up early to do the mantra is a tapas in itself. Doing so many of the mantras is a tapas in itself. But then once you're doing, and so that's one level of tapas. But then, are you focusing on your mantra when you're saying it? Or is your mind wandering around? That's another level of tapas. And then the highest level of tapas that Ramana Maharshi talks about, he said, where's the mantra coming from? When you say it, where is it arising from? If you can follow the mantra back to its source, he said that's the true tapas. So multiple levels of tapas happening when you do a mantra. Or any type of spiritual practice for that matter. So the first word in all the Vedas is Agni. And that's very important. Agni, as I started to mention, is associated with the third eye. And by associating with the third eye, it's that light of perception, of the all perception, the light of understanding. And here the first mantra goes, I glorify Agni, the Purohit, the high priest, the radiant light, the one who invokes the Devas to the sacrifice, who represents what we're offering, and who's the possessor of great gems. That's a very materialistic interpretation. He's the one who is invoking the Devas to the sacrifice. Right now, we're doing a sacrifice. Our sacrifice right now is knowledge, as we speak right now. And what is it that's going to make you understand this knowledge?
To be present?
Inside of you.
Agni.
He might get everything I'm saying, and she might get nothing.
Attention.
So attention. And more than attention, with attention comes
Concentration.
perception. Perception. To be able to attend to it, and hear it, and listen, and to cognize, and to work with that information. That's Agni that's doing that. And so, the sacrifice that we're doing right now is the sacrifice of knowledge to Agni, to our perception and understanding. In the same way they talk about Agni as he who offers the what we are sacrificing to the Devas. The Devas are the good attributes in you. So, right now, Agni is helping you understand this knowledge so that you can utilize it for a good purpose. Multiple levels. The Vedas, the way they're talking. There's a few more from the Rig Veda here, but we're going to skip them because we only have so much time. But you're getting a feel of the Rig Veda, right? It's not something that somebody just mentioned and you know that exists. You actually, my goal right now is to try and have you have a feeling of what the Rig Veda is, so that it's not something far away that you just heard mentioned, that you know what it is. Ayurveda is more focused on rituals, where the Rig Veda is just throwing out the mantra. It's just out there making them happen, saying these incredible sayings that are so multidimensional, it takes lifetimes to learn. The Ayurveda starts taking those same mantras, those same truths, and starts applying them to ritual purposes. You know, if you're getting married, which one should we be saying when you're getting married? You're moving into a new house, like getting them together so that we can use them for ritual purposes, so that we can be invoking the right energies at the right time. That's the Ayurveda. One or two quotes right here from the Ayurveda. Somebody want to read? Let's get a different reader. Johan?
Yosef.
Yosef. Why don't you give us some, why don't you be our Yajurveda?
Okay. Should I start just from the beginning?
Just, oh Creator.
The Ayurveda is the second...
No. Down just the verses, so we can feel some of these verses.
O Creator of the universe, inspire us to perform great deeds. May all knowledge come together and become radiant. A teacher gives knowledge to a student and enlightens him. Thereafter, students give knowledge to someone else. In this way, one enlightens the other and knowledge increases. Increasing knowledge by knowledge is known as jnana yagya.
The sacrifice of knowledge, which I just talked about.
The ultimate aim of a yagya is to increase the glory of knowledge.
Okay, that's enough. So, in the same way, it's these mantras, and they're all about learning and understanding and spiritual realization. We have the Mrityunjaya mantra in here, which is also in the Rig Veda, but here it's given in a little different way. Let's move to the Samaveda. Now, the Samaveda, the difference of the Samaveda, it's the same basic, has a lot of the same mantras, same teaching, but it starts doing it in a more melodic way. It starts singing them. Where if you notice the last one is Agni Malai Purohitam Yajnasya Devam Ritvijam Hotaram Ratnatatamam. It's not very beautiful. It's just, Samaveda, it starts singing. Anybody know any Samavedan mantras?
The Samaveda, that's our group, but it's very melodious. It sounds very different. I can't reproduce it, but I've heard it.
I can't reproduce it. I'm not good enough. Very beautiful, though. They take it and they elaborate, where the previous two Vedas have basically three notes. Anybody that knows Sad? Sa, Re, Sa, Ni. That's, everything is chanted in this up-down reality. Where once we get into the Samaveda, they start singing. That's the main difference with it. Let's see. There's some quotes here that you can read from it. Let's move on to...
question.
Yeah.
So the Gita says that among the Vedas and the Samaveda. Why is that?
Krishna says he's the Samaveda.
Right.
And what does Krishna in general say about when... Do you know the Gita well? What's in this area? What does he say in general? What are the other verses that go along with that?
Among the birds and this, among the ocean, alphabets and A, among all different things.
Among everything that exists, he says he's the best of them all, and he tells you what's the best of each one. And he says, I'm that one that's the best of, It's like if he says of cars, he says, of cars, I'm the Rolls Royces. Of houses, I'm the mansions in Santa Cruz.
You're the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, I'm painting them the Mona Lisa. Like, this is what the Krishna is doing in the Gita. He's showing you that he's the perfection of everything. He's the mount, that summit of artistic, creative perfection. And so by saying he's the Samaveda, he's saying that this is, he's saying that that's the green.
So that's my question. So what makes the Samaveda better than the other Vedas?
There's a Samavedan will, a lot of people argue between the Samaveda and the Rig Veda. Some people say the Rig Veda is the real heart, because it's that first one, and its texts are its mantras are the most ancient, and it's deep and this and that. But there they start singing it. So is the melody taking over your mind? For example, like right now, what's going to be more enjoyable if you were at a show where I was making beautiful music and singing, or just speaking? If I could be saying the same thing and doing it to this incredibly beautiful music that we could all be swaying back and forth to and clapping and learning at the same time, and still conveying the same information, that's my guess. That's my.
I also think it's who you are, which you connect to.
Krishna's saying in the Gita, he's saying he's the Sama of the four.
Right.
So our goal when we get to scriptures like this, and this is a general principle, and this is what, like, even just understanding the goal of Jyotish. I'm teaching you all this so that you understand the goal of Jyotish. it's important that when we say something, when we have this opinion, we're allowed to have our own opinions, but if we want to state it, we should base it on something. And, like, if we start talking about what's the best Veda, we gotta have some reason. And here, Krishna in the Gita is saying that this is the cream. If we don't understand, it's best that we just, say, this is what the Gita says. And we take the authority of the authoritative text. For example, our main text for Jyotish is Parasarahura Shastra. And often people take stuff from there, and they don't agree, and so they start making up their own stuff. Just because you don't understand what it says, you don't go make something up. Instead, we see the text as that it doesn't fit with our understanding. So instead of changing that to fit our understanding, we change our understanding to fit. What don't I understand that I need to understand? What don't we understand about the Samaveda that we need to understand? So that, by the Gita telling us that, it's telling us that there's something special about the Sama that we need to learn about. There's something more special about it. And even if we don't fully know yet the reason, it's there, and it's just a matter of us learning it. So this is the way we have to think when we get into Vedic. That's Vedic science. Okay. So, Atharva Veda. Now, from the Rig Veda, the quotes were translations that I worked with, and some of them I changed and made them fit nicely. The other Vedas, they're other people's translations, and I can't say, you can see that they're not in the same font as everything else. I can't say I agree 100% with those translations. They're there for you to read so that you can get a feeling of those Vedas. Next one is the Atharva Veda. Who's heard of the Atharva Veda and knows anything about it? You've heard of it, but you don't, you know what I mean?
Well, I know a little bit about it.
Yeah, tell me.
It's got all the fun stuff in it.
That's all the fun stuff.
He's got the fun stuff.
Healing and harming.
Which is?
Spells and curses and mantras to do things. It's very practical.
Very, very materialistically practical. Now, traditionally, about 2,500 years ago, it was, how today we say the 4 Vedas? Back then you said the 3 Vedas. Atharva Veda wasn't officially counted as part of the Vedas. You had the Tri Veda, the 3 Vedas, and then there was those people who do Atharva Veda. And the fact of that split, as India started to shift and change and really needed to hold together, because of that split, there was a big fall as a lot of invading cultures were coming into India. And there was a real fall in Vedic society. And in order to uplift that fall, Vyasa accepted the Atharva Veda. He accepted all these people that practiced that Veda in and made them part of authoritative Vedas. And so he brought the 4 Vedas together so that all the Vedic scholars would work together. And in some ways I perceive it as similar to if we look at what happened in Tibet. There was 2 different warring schools of Buddhism. And because of that warring Buddhism, they're both putting curses on each other. They're both doing black magic on each other so the other one falls. And so all of a sudden, they come in and they get conquered by someone else. If they were both working together and doing mantras to protect each other, could they have been taken over by an outer power? So in the same way, the 3 Vedas in this Atharva Veda were separate for a time, and then they started getting this conquering invaders, and they had to say, okay, and so they were brought together by Vyasa. Now the different SJC centers around the world, and there's multiple all over the world, this one were named after Vyasa. And Vyasa is the one who brought these outer components together so that they would work together. And he also codified a lot of the Vedas, because the Vedas at that time, they were so huge. You needed, in the different yugas, people lived different amounts of time, and so people were living a lot longer back then, and their memories were bigger, and they could just, huge amounts of knowledge, and he codified the 4 Vedas into, this is what's in this Veda, this is what's in that Veda. And he added the Atharva Veda in. So the Atharva Veda was a later addition, and so it's slightly different than the other Vedas. And in that way, it works a lot more with the material plane. And as he said, spells, and really all kinds of spells. When you get into the Atharva Veda has, if somebody stole something from you, there's spells to make them die so that it comes back to you. If you want somebody to fall in love with you, there's infatuation spells to make them, fall in love with you. All kinds of really dangerous mantras and spells. But Vyasa brought it together so everybody would work together. So it's officially part of the Vedas, but just so you know, it's not the actual seers of the Rig Veda did not consider it part of the Vedas. But in this day and age, we do consider it part of the Vedas.
When did this happen with Vyasa?
Just before the Mahabharata War, which is about the time of Krishna, which according to Sri Jyotish star calculations is about 2,600 years ago. Is that right? 2,000. What is it? 2,600 BC.
BC, so 5,000 years.
So 5,000 years.
Yeah.
Huh?
I was going to say that would make more sense, because the date you were giving before was more like kind of Buddha.
Yeah. 2006. There's in the Puranas we have Krishna's chart, his birth chart, but there's no, what year they were using back then in their system of months. It's just very, and this incredible astrologer who makes the program Sri Jyotish Star, he made this part of his program where you could type in a chart, and then you write search, and it searches everywhere in the last. You can put the parameters, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years. And so we put 10,000 years ahead, 10,000 years behind.
Oh, wow.
And we searched Krishna's chart, and it came up at like 2,600 BC, which fits perfectly with everything else, with what the Vedas say, with it fits. And before that, I was very skeptical about the whole reality. And after that, I was like, I could not believe a computer program just calculated that the time was what they said the time was.
I thought it was like a myth.
I totally believed it was a myth. But after that, my meditation, a lot of the stories of Krishna, they get kind of big. But then if we look at Amaji, and if you think about Amaji as an incarnation of Kali, she's a woman who's sitting there. She has incredible special powers. She rarely sleeps. She, does things that the average person doesn't. But she's a physical woman who has a birth chart. Actually, that's her birth chart right there. So, she's a physically manifest being in this world. And so in the same way, Krishna was a physically manifest being in this world. He was a person. And there's, in the different texts, that he was a king of a state. So he would go to parliament and argue politics. We don't think about that in a lot of the more mythological stories of Krishna, but he was a historical figure as well. And Vyasa was actually his grand uncle. There's a whole, the whole family reality of it. Anyway, I'm going off topic.
So Tantra came after the Vedas. Did Tantra come from this Atharva Veda, or came after that?
Now this is a big argument among different people. And they occasionally have huge conferences, and Buddhists say that they made up Tantra, that they created Tantra. And
we did not.
The Vajrayanas say the Buddha gave it. Some of them. I've been to some of these conferences where they argue that Tantra doesn't come from the Vedas. Now when we look at Nirukta, and we look at the Atharva Veda, I can't, from these we get the Brahmanas, everything. We're going to talk about the evolution of the Vedas out of into the different texts. We eventually get Yamala texts, and then we eventually get Tantric texts. And you don't all of a sudden just get a religion that's taking spells and dividing the spells into certain categories, and taking that Ra, the sound Ra, is the fire element. And so when we put like Rang in the third chakra, it's invoking the fire element. You don't make that up. That's coming from like research and meditation, and that's evolving from the science of Nirukta, and I wouldn't say specifically Atharva Veda. It's deeper. It's the whole Vedic science, and it's more the limbs of the Veda that it's evolving from, and the actual practice. Because you get to these points where, if you notice, people don't sit there and chant the whole Veda. You'll chant Mrityunjaya mantra, right? You know Mrityunjaya mantra? Trayambakam yajamahe sugantim pushtivardhanam. That's Rig Veda. But you're not chanting the whole thing, you're only chanting one, right? So they tell you that this one verse has this effect, and they say, go do this one verse, and this is the result it'll have. And then they give you another verse and say, this verse will give you this result. So you start getting that, and then they say, well, you can take and condense that whole mantra into one bija, Doom. You can take that whole Mrityunjaya and just say Doom, and if you meditate on that right, you get the whole effect of just that. So it was a slow evolution of the practice. But then you get unorthodox schools, and those unorthodox schools need to change names. So that's my belief in the evolution into Tantra. And yes, it does come, but I wouldn't say just from the Atharva Veda. It comes from the whole huge science of Vedic understanding. So Atharva Veda. Did I talk any more about Atharva? Let's get someone different to read the quotes from Atharva. Kathy, you want to read some Atharva quotes? Water?
Did you want to say sweet like honey?
Yeah, read that one. That's a nice one.
Sweet like
See, they got
honey.
beautiful things in there too.
Sweet like honey be the lovely glances of a husband and wife. May our faces look equally beautiful. Within the bosom harmony. May one spirit dwell in both of us. The eyes of us two shine like honey, our foreheads gleam like ointment. Place me within thy heart. May one mind be in common to us both.
There's some beautiful stuff in the Atharva Veda. And very practical. Very practical. We're not into these there is a multi-dimensional complex to it, but not like the other Vedas.
Water is the elixir of life. Water has medicinal value. May the curse go back to the person who curses. May we befriend them who are kind and polite. All that which pollutes the mind falls prey to evil and sin. Others should be kept in total control.
Just one more.
I destroy the enemies by acquiring knowledge and consequently enlightening myself.
So it's not that dark. They're talking about destroying your enemies by acquiring knowledge. The smarter you become, you say the person isn't your enemy. So it's not too dark, but they definitely do have dark spells in there as well. Can somebody hit that light? Okay. So now there's 4 parts of the Veda. So those are the 4 actual Vedic texts, and those Vedic texts are called samhitas. They're the mantra samhitas. They're actually containing the mantras themselves. Then we have a text called the Brahmana. Anybody heard of Satapatha Brahmana? It's thrown around a lot. Satapatha Brahmana, it starts interpreting the meaning of what these verses mean. Like when I started talking about the fire, how did I ever get that? How would I have ever understood some of these verses to mean what they mean? So the Brahmanas start talking about the deeper meaning of what they mean, and they start giving practical rituals for the actual use as well.
Is this the Anga?
This is 4 parts of the Veda, 1.2.1. I know I should have numbered the pages. At the bottom of the page with the Atharva Veda quote. Okay. So we have Brahmanas, which they start giving the deeper meaning and start utilizing these in our daily life. So how can we use this? So that Agni mantra is a mantra that's done before you study to understand. So knowing that, the Brahmanas start talking about how to use these on a practical level. Even the arcane Rig Veda, it talks about how to use that on a practical level. Then we have the Aranyakas, and the Aranyakas are more about the internal meditation of these things. It goes right into the internal, where if you notice at the Brahmana level, I'm talking about something to meditate on before class, to understand the knowledge, right? So it's a practical worldly thing. When we get into the Aranyaka text, Aranyaka literally means jungle. Mm-hmm. So it's what you're supposed to read when you go away to the jungle. Mm-hmm. That starts talking about the more meditative aspect. That Agni is the light in our third eye that we need to meditate on, and we need to visualize it burning and purifying our perception. So the Aranyakas start giving that level of interpretation of the Veda. Mm-hmm. And then we have the Upanishads. That's our 4th section of Vedas. And the Upanishads, they basically give core essence. They don't even start talking about the Agni. They just say that, it's that tapas that's burning up inside, and you need to focus your mind on the internal self. You need to perceive the self. You are that which is eternal. So the Upanishads start giving the actual inner teaching of the Vedas. So we have the Mantra Samhita, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, and the Upanishads. And in traditional Vedic society, tradition, which no one follows tradition really anymore, but the tradition is the first 25 years of life is your student, it's considered the student section of life. And at that time, you're supposed to study and memorize and learn the Vedic mantra samhitas. So you learn the mantras, you study the mantras. You learn the Mrityunjaya mantra. What is the Mrityunjaya mantra? You memorize it, you say it. This is what we do that first 25 years. Then, the next 25 years, from 25 to 50, we start learning about the practical uses and rituals of everything that we've been learning. And we start applying it. So, you get a family and you have a son and your son is sick. So you do the Mrityunjaya to help that son come out of affliction. So it's the practical uses of upholding a family. That's the Brahmanas. So the Brahmanas are studied at that time. And then after 50, from 50 to 75, you're supposed to start, you give advice to your family and those around you, but you start separating and going more into spiritual life. And at that time, that's when the Aranyakas become important. Mm-hmm. Because you don't need to be working on the material plane anymore. You need to be working on the internal spiritual plane. And that becomes more important. And so the Aranyakas start working on meditation and the deeper spiritual understanding. And then the Upanishads, they say from 75 to 108, you study that. Because that's the deep core inner essence. And they say if you start reading the Upanishads too early, you won't want to exist in the world. You'll want to just give up everything and go off and just meditate on the true self. This is Vedic philosophy. And you're supposed to have a family first, according to the Vedas. You're supposed to exist in the world to have the experience and then go off into the spiritual realm. So the Upanishads traditionally are something that you focus on at the end of your life to understand the deeper internal signification. Yet, remember, nothing is fundamental with the Vedas. So you still should be reading Upanishads and looking at the Brahmanas and looking at Aranyakas. We're still using all those different branches all the time. Just where is the predominant focus being put is the main concept behind that. It's not fundamental. At 25 you stop studying, memorizing the mantras and you start practicing. It's giving a general foundation for where your focus should be. At what stage of life you are, where you should be putting more of your emphasis. Because if you're getting towards the last quarter of life, you shouldn't be putting your focus on worldly practices and how to make things better in the world. At that time, you might still need them. You might still, somebody who's 75 might still be having some monetary problems and need to do a practice to improve their monetary affairs. But their main focus and energy should be on Upanishads, understanding the heart essence and their true nature. Okay. So in Jyotish, we also take this into account. When we're reading a chart, we take into account the age a person is, as well as what their goals in life are. And we need to give them advice accordingly. This is how the Vedas are giving the foundation for how we're advising people. What should be the person's focus? If they're still in that first quarter of life, there needs to be emphasis on focusing on education. Even if it's not the Rig Vedic mantras, we need to be focusing on the person getting as much education as they can in that first quarter of life. Where in that second quarter of life, we start putting the emphasis on how to be sustaining and manifesting of a family life and manifesting money and manifesting career. We start looking at career a lot more at that section. Where when we start moving into the next section, we start talking much more about spirituality. If you're doing a reading with somebody, you start how much time you're spending on what aspect is going to start changing. So this is our foundation for that. And we don't just make it up. We see that this is the foundation. This is what the Vedas, this is the way that they're teaching. And so that's our foundation for understanding how we're giving advice correctly. And in a way that's going to be harmonious for a person. 4 parts of the Vedas, Aranyakas, Upanishads. Let's talk a little bit more about Upanishads. The philosophy that comes from the Upanishads is called Vedanta. Anybody want to interpret the word Vedanta?
End of the Vedas.
End of the Vedas. And what's the word Veda mean? Knowledge. So it's the end of knowledge. So the Upanishads are the end of knowledge. Does that mean like you read them and then you're done learning?
It means you read them and then you don't need to learn anything else.
You just read them and you don't need to learn anything else.
Yeah.
Nothing else is important. You don't have to. You don't get a new car and read the owner's manual anymore.
You're at
No,
the
you
state
just
of knowledge
are.
itself.
Yeah.
Huh?
You're at the state of knowledge itself.
What state of knowledge?
Self-knowledge.
Consciousness.
Correct. The knowledge of self, consciousness. You get to that knowledge where all knowledge comes from. The Upanishads are the end of knowledge in that they're the key most important knowledge. The key most important knowledge. So Upanishads and Vedantas, it's the core understanding. And from the Upanishads we get, not only did the Upanishads take the core understanding of the Vedas, but then they decided to take the Upanishads and summarize them into 1 or 2 words. Think you can summarize them into 1 or 2 words? They did it! So on the next page we have what are called Mahavakyas. Maha means great, Vakya means saying. So these are great sayings. And the concept is that in these verses is contained the essence of the Upanishads. So the Upanishads contain the essence of the Vedas. And then these short verses contain the essence of the Upanishads. So they summed up all the Vedas into a few verses. I don't know, I find it funny.
But you can't skip any of them.
But you can't skip anything, no. So like, the one that is my favorite here is 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth one down. Tat Twamasi, which means you are that. And so, it's not a class on Vedanta, but with meditating on this, you are that. And in that, remember what I said, that they state there is an absolute truth, but they're not exactly stating the absolute truth, they keep pointing to it. And in the same way, they're pointing, when they say that, they mean that which is the absolute truth of who you are. And they're saying you are that. You are the truth of that absolute. Whether you call it consciousness, whatever you call it, you are that. And so these core sayings are all based on the realization of your true nature as whatever name you want to put on it. We'll say that. We'll say top. It's the same word as in English, except minus the T. Top, that. So you are that true, whatever, whether you want to say God, whether you want to say Vishnu, whether you want to say Buddha, whether you want to say pure infinite consciousness, whatever word, you are that. And that's summing up the Vedas. So the core essence is that you are that true nature of the universe. This is the core essence of the Vedas. Understanding the truth of who you are. So now if Jyotish is a limb of the Vedas, the goal of the Vedas is to make you understand the truth of who you are. What's the goal of Jyotish? Can we argue? Is there room to like, yes, we can use it to help people. Yes, we can use it to guide people. Multiple things we can do with it. We can interpret dreams with it. But its goal is to teach you who you are and make you realize your true nature. That's the core goal of Jyotish. Okay?
So doesn't it work at different levels? Like Jyotish is more on the material and mundane level, but
we can use it at the mundane level. Just like all those rigged mantras. Remember how intense and incredible and infinite that was? Talking about our highest spiritual truth. At the same level, we can use it to better understand the class. We can use it to improve our digestion if we want to. We can use it on the mundane level. But that's the Vedas. It's understanding that this mundane level and the super mundane level are one. And that's why it's Jyotish, it's light. Because it's perceiving everything in its light essence.
Is that what Jyotish means?
Jyotish means the study of light. It doesn't mean the study of the stars. It's the study of light, Jyoti. It's the light that allows you to perceive. That point of perception that is you. The only thing in you that doesn't change is that light of perception.
Individual.
You can give it whatever word you want. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not, right? But so, yes, it's working on the material plane, but by calling the material plane and saying that this isn't God, that's not truth. Because everything is. Everything is divine. Everything has divinity in it. Everything is divine. And so everything that's moving is the essence of divinity working. It's all the turning of that divine Vishnu, God, Shiva, whatever you want to call it, consciousness. Everything is that at its essence. And so Jyotish is working on that level. It's working at every single level, because at some point it's not differentiating any of those levels, because it's perceiving them all as one at the same time. So it's not mundane, but it's not mundane. So that's why understanding the Vedas is so important to understand Jyotish. Right? Okay. So our next section is the 6 limbs. And I don't know if I'm going to cover the 6 limbs today.